Back in the day, two-stick transmissions were actually quite common. Spicer was the big manufacturer of these setups, and basically what it was, you could have a 5 and a 3, or a 4 and a 4, 5 and a 4, or even at the end there you could have a 6 and a 4. But basically what this was, a main transmission mounted right to the bell housing of the engine, and then an auxiliary transmission mounted directly behind. And the idea was that the combination of gears that you could set up between the main box and the auxiliary box, or sometimes called the Brownie or the auxiliary transmission, you could find the right combination for just about any RPM you wanted to run, or any weight that you had to pull, or any hill that you had to pull up. And it was kind of a nice setup because you could basically decide where your motor was happiest, what RPM the engine liked, and you could find a gear that would keep the engine at that RPM for the most part, whether you were pulling the hill or whatever you were doing. It was a good all-around working combination. However, they had more than a few issues. The Spicer two-box transmissions, they didn't like to shift when they were too hot. They didn't like to shift when they were too cold. If you missed a shift every once in a while and went for the wrong combination, they could damn near snap your wrist when they kicked back. One of the worst things, though, one of the most annoying things about them was, aside from the fact that you could get lost, you could be going up a hill thinking about something else, and all of a sudden you'd need to drop a gear, but you forget where you were in your pattern, and there you'd be, and you forget, and you wouldn't know where to put the sticks. But one of the worst things was that every once in a while you were shifting gears, because the one transmission was mounted right behind the other, the second transmission, the linkage had to kind of reach around the first transmission, so the two sticks came up side by side, but the linkages underneath were so close that every once in a while you were shifting the two sticks, the linkages would catch and lock. And sometimes you could separate them with the sticks, and sometimes you couldn't. And if you couldn't, and this happened fairly often, you'd have to shove in the clutch of the truck, coast to the side, shut the thing off in gear, set the brakes, and then crawl underneath with a crowbar or something like that to try to pry the linkages loose so you could get going again. And, you know, it never happened on a nice, warm, dry day. It always happened when it was raining or snowing, and it was a greasy experience getting under there with a crowbar. It wasn't that nice. So these two-box transmissions had their issues. Now, in the late 60s, early 70s, sometime around there, the competition, primarily Eaton, started working on a transmission that was housed all in one. It was like an air shift rather than a manual stick shift transmission for the back box. So it was an air shift, and they came out with this transmission. It was a 13-speed initially, and it was great. It had its issues too, but they kept perfecting them and kept working on it, making it better and better. And later on they came out with the 18-speed, which was even nicer because it had more gears, more combinations. But again, then the 18-speed could do what the 6 and the 4 was meant to do. You could pick a gear and an RPM and just work the truck to its best proficiency because you're at the RPMs you needed. And back then we weren't looking for cool. We were looking for bulletproof. We were looking for something that wouldn't put us on the side of the road or leave us stranded. We just wanted something that we couldn't break, even in the worst conditions. And they came out with these 13s and the Super 13s and the 18s, and they were the way to go. And so it got to the point with Spicer and the 6 and the 4 that by the time the year 2000 came around, they were virtually obsolete. I had a buddy, for instance, that was building a big large car back in 2000, and he spec'd it with a 6 and a 4 Spicer. And Peterbilt came back to him and said, you know, we can put in the 6 and the 4, but Pete won't warranty it. So that was the end of that argument right there. My buddy went for the 18-speed because he sure didn't want to toss away a warranty. And they really became, the 18 speeds have become the transmission of the day now. It's kind of interesting now to look at what's going on today. And some of the big chrome shops, like Chrome Shop Mafia, for instance, are producing a kit where there are two sticks in the truck, but all the second stick really does is take over what the air shift button on the 18 would do. So you can pull back the second stick and shift ranges rather than flip the button. And it's all kind of for looks more than anything else. And so the guys have a second stick to play with. But it's kind of nice when you look at that happening and see that some of the big things that we thought were just functional at the time, they were just functional, now have become the cool look. And guys get these fake two-stick combinations basically so they can play with the other stick, or so some guy can look in the cab and go, whoa, cool, 2 sticks. So it's kind of nice in the long run to see that old school hasn't really gone away. It's still there to some extent.